on behalf of Coca-Cola and the more than 7,000 Coca-Cola employees in California.
Okay, thank you both very, very much. Before I open up with more than a handful of questions that I have, I'd like to afford both of you an opportunity. I mean, I think you did so in an indirect way through your presentations, but sort of the interest of being fair and balanced here today, there was 2 panels that came up before you. Is there anything else that you might not have touched on in your prepared remarks that you feel you need to rebut or refute from the first 2 panels before we jump into the questions on your presentation?
That would be several things, I guess, but
pick 2.
Big picture. I think we just need to remain focused on all calories count, and it's all calories from foods that we take in, beverages that we take in, and all calories that we expend through physical activity.
Okay. Ditto?
As a scientist, I would just say it's important really to look at the totality of evidence.
Okay. All right, so that's the first question. Second, again, just to sort of set a context and a tone here for the spirit of the following conversations, I would agree with you that sodas or sugar sweetened beverage consumption alone isn't the cause of the obesity epidemic, the diabetes epidemic, et cetera, in our nation, but I do believe it plays a role. Would you agree with that statement, that it plays a role, or do you absolutely sort of refuse or disagree with any correlation or any role in the greater conversation here? Because I got to be honest, as you were presenting, I couldn't tell which way you were leaning. Either, well, it plays a role, but it's just one piece of a much more complex equation versus has absolutely nothing to do with obesity and diabetes. So I just want to know where you're coming from as I get ready for my next questions.
Senator, I'm actually glad that I presented it as objectively as I could as a scientist, because that's what we're here for. And I think that, as I stated in my presentation, that all calories count, and if all calories from beverages, we have to count those calories as well.
Okay.
I certainly agree that all calories count, and we need to look at the totality of the diet.
See, well, I may not be a scientist, but I am an engineer, so I think I know what you're talking about. All calories do count, right? We have input and output. Output right. Being physical activity, exercise, how we expend those calories, and the intake. And if there's a lack of balance here, either on the underside or the overside, then we're going to get the result in our body. And while I agree all calories count, we heard a theme in the prior panels that not all calories are created equal. Do you agree with that statement or not?
That data too are conflicting, and I didn't present any of those data today because there are studies that show on both sides of that argument that there is nothing unique about liquid calories, and there are studies on the other side as well. So, as Dr. Leahy indicated, I think we need to make sure that you have all of the information that you need in order to make...
So if I eat a banana, and the banana has X number of calories in it, versus someone who consumes the equal number of calories by way of Coke or Pepsi or Dr. Pepper, I'm not trying to discriminate here, the benefit impact on my body is the same?
If you're consuming the calories from the banana and there's the same number of calories as in a beverage that you consume, the impact on your body is calories are calories.
Versus other nutritional value. And, a couple of themes I want to explore here, but I do want to get to a point where we talk about this part of a healthy diet versus the discretionary calories that was presented earlier, or maybe the next industry panel would be a better place for it, because I recognize one of the witnesses from a meeting we had in my office a couple of weeks ago. Dr. Story, you actually intrigued me in your presentation with part of sort of your recommendations and a better way to approach the conversation, being more holistically, disclose more, if you will, on the amount of calories. You talked about some labeling. Coca-Cola's doing some of this stuff. And if calories are calories, even though we're talking about sugar-sweetened beverages today, if calories are calories, and part of your recommendation is disclose more information, educate consumers on what the proper amounts are, balancing with exercise, and that's going to be our path to better health, then it would seem to me you would support the concept of what we did last year in our menu labeling legislation, not telling people what they can or can't consume, or what restaurants can or cannot offer, but that information being disclosed can be very helpful and very powerful. Would you agree with that?
Senator, I was in academia for a number of years, and therefore I am a big fan of information and education. And I think the more information that we can provide to people in a way that they can understand it and educate them on what to do with that information, I think that that is the way we need to go. And then people can be free to make their own choices after that. Agreement, disagreement?
Well, we are moving forward at Coca-Cola with front-of-pack labeling with regard to calories. So we certainly support providing consumers with information.
Great. That's music to my ears. I think I have another follow-up question on the same topic. As the author of the legislation, one of the questions we struggled with was whether the menu labeling requirements would apply to beverages or not. And if so, how? Because on the one hand, you go walk into a grocery store and you can buy either a single can or a 2-liter bottle or anything in between, and you're right, for packaged product, the nutritional information labeling requirement is pretty clear. But it's tough to do that at a lot of the fast food places where you serve yourself, and it's unlimited refills in many cases. So should we, based on your presentation, based on these questions, based on your responses, I can't help but conclude that you would be supportive of expanding the scope of the menu labeling and restaurant law in California to include fountain drinks. Agree or disagree?
I think that the implementation of such thing will be tricky, I think, as you have just indicated. And that's where the education piece that I talked about...
I'm not suggesting it'd be easy. You're probably right. It's tricky because I can't determine who's reaching for the diet versus who's reaching for the regular versus who's reaching for the, citrus, no caffeine, but it's got the calories anyway option. But if there's a way to figure it out, again, based on your testimony, based on your responses to my prior questions, it sounds to me like you would agree that that's a direction we got to move in, because providing consumers that information is part of a more effective, comprehensive strategy.
As I said, I think information is important. However we can get it to consumers, and education on what to do with the information is probably even more important, because only through education can people make proper choices for themselves that will fit into their lifestyle.
Okay. Thank you very much for those responses.